Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Hello and welcome to the Holy Movie Podcast, where we watch movies with you, discuss the moments that work, the moments that don't, and the moments that reflect truth in unexpected ways. Did this movie reflect truth in unexpected ways to you, Nathaniel?
You know, we've been saying that slogan for a little over a year now, and I've always wondered, what does it mean to reflect truth in unexpected ways? And I've been waiting to watch a movie and for it to really stick out to me so I could look there. That's an unexpected truth. I think this movie captured something very realistic to life, but did it in a little bit of a film magic way. I think sometimes when we have really artsy films and they're very slice of life, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the director can almost pursue realism over a story. So we're almost pushing into documentary style at that point. I'm not saying that, and this movie wasn't. I think the truths that came out of it, the magic that came out of it, and the unexpected was them showing kind of a normal life, but an ever so subtly magical movie lens, even though it's very hyper realistic. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense to me. By the way, folks, we're talking about the movie Gueros, which came out in 2014, directed and written by Alonso Ruiz Palacios. This was a first feature film for him.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it won several awards at the Mexican equivalent of the Oscars. One of those was Best First Feature. Right? It also won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Sound, Best Cinematography, and it was nominated for Original Screenplay, Best Actress, Actor, Breakthrough Male Performance, Best Score, Film Editing, Art Direction.
Now, I don't want to sound racist in a movie about a different culture, but I'd like to think that the Mexican equivalent of the Oscars, their festival, it's still the little golden guy, but he has a sombrero and a mustache. And that's what they give out. And I think that's very cute and very nice. And I hope that's real.
I don't know what they hand out, but I certainly hope it's that now. But you mentioned something very interesting, how this depicts real life, right? But through a movie magic lens. So in film school, we were told about like realism and formalism as a spectrum, right? On the realist side of filmmaking, you prefer long shots and untrained actors and continuity editing. And then on the formalistic side, right, you're not going for reality as it is, you're going for reality heightened, right? And so you're constructing sets rather than filming on location. You are filming wacky scenarios and characters that are a little larger than life. This movie right here, Alonso was directly inspired by the French New Wave. And the French New Wave combines the best of both worlds. What do you remember about the French New Wave? Do you have any?
Oh man,
thoughts?
Jeffrey is pulling up the old film theory class with Matthew Fisher and 2019 or 2020 was it? The French Wave. I assume the French Wave isn't the same as oh my gosh, what's the term in politics? Not dystopian. That's not what I'm trying to think of at all. What's like nothing matters? That's not like apathy. You know what I'm talking about?
It's postmodern.
Yeah, postmodern. Is the French Wave postmodern within the film world, or is that just completely incorrect?
I could see like nuggets and slivers of it. The French New Wave was a movement born out of a dissatisfaction with the standard Hollywood fare that was being fed to a post-war French audience, who felt that the dishes they were being served lacked sincerity and were getting a bit stale. Their solution was they incorporated both realist and formalist techniques to create something entirely unique, right? Dialogue was often improvised, plot was de-emphasized, location shooting was preferred, and casts were a healthy mix of actors and non-actors. But they also made heavy use of jump cuts, were willing to be more experimental and told stories non-linearly. They were also very willing to take the camera off of the tripod. We see all of these things in this movie. Do you where do you notice that?
Oh gosh, definitely the last thing you said with the camera not being on the tripod, which I liked. You know, this being I don't know if it was intentional. I mean, it almost seems like it was. There's a whole kind of breaking the fourth wall bit about this in the middle of the movie that we can talk about later. But it does seem like it's kind of an art house film, like if you made this for Sundance kind of film. And when you have those types of movies, you have a certain expectation with the quality of the cinematography. It's going to be more dreamlike. It's going to be more handheld. It's going to be more shaky. It goes against kind of the flowing river that is the Hollywood with the steady rig, the smooth cameras, the CGI, everything that looks very not just there's movement, we're moved away from just like tripod and stationary, but it still looks very fluid and controlled. Art house films feel less controlled. They feel more chaotic because they're trying to capture something that is a little more akin to real life. So yeah, 100% as far as the camera, a lot of that. The two scenes that immediately come to mind is Thomas, the younger brother, and then his the older brother's friend, Santos. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kicking this can back and forth. Something that we did all the time as kids. You try to make sure the rock or the pine cone or the can doesn't get left behind as you're on a walk. And the camera is just jittering back and forth as they're kicking this can. And then another shot or another scene that I loved was where the brother's having a panic attack and his roommate, they have to like drag him out of the apartment because their neighbor's going to come beat them up. And he's literally throwing him down these stairs. They're running down these stairs while he's having a panic attack, almost like incapacitated. He can't like do anything. And the camera's following them, tripping over itself, losing focus, like all over the place. Very jarring, but one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Before I dive too much into specific scenes, yes. So I saw a lot in the camera, like the shakiness of the camera. I also felt it very much in the acting. It reminds me a little bit of Nomadland, which I think goes more into realism. I think Nomadland is even pushing this the spectrum of like it almost felt like a documentary. And in that movie, I think it was the lead who was. Do you remember the lead in Nomadland? Her name's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't remember the name, but I remember she gave a fantastic performance.
She was the only real actress in it for the most part. 90% of the rest of the cast were just real people. And I feel like, I don't know if it's true, but like when I looked it up on Wikipedia, the only four casts that were named were our four main leads, who were at the end of the day, they were the leads. They took up 90% of the screen time, but everyone else around them did feel like real people. So I also felt it in that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it is interesting to think about the line that separates, I guess, narrative storytelling and documentary. Um, and I feel like even when you're filming a documentary, you want to give it a narrative. You have movies like Gueros and Nomadland that blur those lines. How do you feel about those lines blurring? Do you feel that there's a way of doing it effectively? Do you like seeing it in a movie or in a documentary? Or do you wish that directors would sort of pick a lane?
That's a good question. I never want directors to pick a lane because I think, okay. That's not a true statement. I do think you need to know what lane you're in, what type of movie you're making, and the meaning and the message and the audience. I think that's important. So it's not like do whatever you want and go all over the place. But what I'm trying to say is when it comes to movies, and if you view movies as an art form, as I do, you need to experiment. You need to push the boundaries. You need to have new waves because they're going to introduce new things. If you let filmmaking get stale, like it is kind of in America right now with our big blockbusters and our superhero movies, everything gets stale. It's not just the stories, it's the acting, it's the cinematography, it's the production design, it's the coloring, it's the look of everything, it's the feel, it's the taste, it's the smell. It all becomes stale. So is it true that I have certain types of movies I enjoy more? Yeah, of course. But I never want a director to feel like they have to stay in that lane. Oh, after 200 years of making movies, we figured it out. It is this thing and only this thing. That will never be true. Just because I don't like your movie doesn't mean I don't appreciate that you're trying something different. And when it comes to these movies that mix realism and formalism, I think I have a respect for them. I have appreciation of like, this is a hard thing to do with. And I think this movie towed the line really well. Because like I said, I love the fact that it feels like a genuine real slice of life, but almost like magical. And even though it was like the most mundane stuff going on. And so I have a respect for it, but it will never, for the most part, be my like cup of tea. And so that's how I feel. I love it. I think it's awesome these people are doing it. It might even inspire me. But at the end of the day, sometimes it sacrifices a propelled forward story. And that's what I love about movies the most. I love the stories that we can tell. And for me, it's the stories we get to create in our mind that can never exist in the real world. For other people, our dear friend Vega, who picked this movie, often I think it's the stories of the humans around him that he wants to cure that impacts him the most with film, which is leaning more towards realism and documentary, which is great. But that's not what I love about film. Doesn't mean there's not a great place for it. Doesn't mean it's not amazing.
I mean, I guess we haven't, gone out and said it yet, but uh, I'm taking from this you didn't like the movie.
Didn't like is too negative. I think exactly what I said. I think I really started to enjoy the second half. I really enjoyed the slice of life of the two brothers in New Mexico City, just going on this little adventure, trying to find this musician, and it felt real, but at the same time not. Like it was a fun coming of age story where the brothers were more or less the same people at the beginning of the story that at the end of the story, but you did in fact feel like you saw a slice of their life, like a week or a summer. And I enjoyed that, but I do think it took a while to get into it and for me to understand what we're doing. And again, I'm much more classically structured to enjoy Western Hollywood movies. I don't even want to say Western Hollywood because that's not, I mean, I like some Hollywood movies, but I also like some non Hollywood movies. But I do like usually to like get a little more meat on what's happening. And this movie takes its time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for me, it makes it a little less enjoyable of a watch.
That's so fair, and that's a difference between you and I, and in that I really like movies that meander, right? That exist in a moment, and I even like movies that might not have a clear point at the end of the day. The kind of movie that rewards rewatching because perhaps there are small truths to be plucked from it here and there. Something you mentioned concerning this movie is that it is, in fact, a coming of age story, right? Which I find so interesting because we've covered coming of age stories before on this podcast. Last season, we dedicated a whole category to it. My pick was Dear Lemon Lima, and your pick was Kings of Summer. How does this movie compare to those? And how does it succeed, or where does it fail as a coming of age story?
Now that's a good question. I think it beats both of them. This is not on an enjoyment level. Ooh, did I enjoy this movie more than either of those movie watching experiences? And to be honest, I don't know. I would probably say yes for the pure reason. Dear Lemon Lima and The Kings of Summer wasn't mentally challenging. I wasn't gnawing on anything. What they weren't bad. Like it was Dear Lemon Lima wasn't great. And Kings of Summer was mediocre. But there wasn't anything challenging to digest while watching. It made sense. I got the character. So it's so hard because like everything I just said, how like that's what I do like a more stereotypical story. I'm now going to say I think Dear Lemon Lima and The Kings of Summer kind of failed on where it just felt too general. Like, okay, here are these kids. They're struggling with these things and now they're not struggling with them. I just didn't think the story was strong enough. So maybe while I appreciate a strong story, it's better to not attempt it and fail than to do something completely different. And Gueros just did something completely different that I really appreciated. And I do feel like it felt like I was watching someone actually come of age. Someone was actually experiencing life. And like I said, I do not think from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, our characters were changed. But what I do believe is those, whether it was a week or a month, will be a pivotal, life changing experience in the long span of their life. Think about it. How often were you 13 and got done with an event and went, oh, that's a canon event? When I'm 25, I'm going to remember that and be like, that shaped me so much that I just finished that last season of Adventure Time, that I just went on boating with my cousins in Michigan. Like you don't think that way when you're 12 or 13. And it didn't feel that way for Thomas once he finished his adventure searching down the elusive musician. He didn't feel like he had changed all that much, but us as the audience felt like this is a pivotal moment in your life that you will reflect upon in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I think it was a successful coming of age.
Well, that's awesome. We agree that this is a coming of age story for Thomas, but would you say that this is also a coming of age story for Sombra?
Yeah, I
We've got a
definitely
man
think
in his
so.
early 20s. I think that we have these two individuals that can, in various uh, respects, be considered at like the peak of youth, right? And I think that this is a canon event for both of them, right? Um, but what are your thoughts on Sombra being uh, the main character in his own coming of age story? And what do you think about his arc? Do you think he has an arc?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get around to answering that question, but I'll say I feel like Sombros's and Thomas's coming of age stories couldn't have happened separately. I'm not saying they're parallel or foils to each other, but audience at home. I don't know if you're an only child or an older child or a younger child, a boy or a girl. Me and Jeffrey are both younger brothers. I have one older brother, Jeffrey has three older brothers. I feel like I heavily related and really enjoyed watching the older Sombros go through trying to figure out what he feels about the revolution that's kind of happening in New Mexico, also with his love life and figuring out just who he is and like becoming an adult at like what, 20, 21, 22. But at the same time, you're watching it through the lens kind of his younger brother Thomas, who's starting to like 13, 14. He's going through puberty. He's more finding just who he is as a human, let alone who he is on these bigger grand scales of like romance and what do I mean in the world and politics and what do I owe my country? And I thought it really worked to get to watch each other's coming of age. Like they watched each other come of age together in different scenes and different moments of their youth. And I thought that was really cool. So what did I think of Sombros's arc? Um, it was really nuanced, like, and that's what I liked. It was like the backdrop of him going to this college where all the students were on strike because the government was trying to raise tuition, and he had to say, as he said it, he went on strike from going on strike, and so he was like, "Hey, I'm done going on strike." So you get this idea of he's kind of torn. He's around all these activists, all these people who care deeply about the politics of their country and what is fair and what is just. And he's much more kind of a bum. He doesn't go to these rallies. He doesn't go to these meetings. He's kind of just loafing about, stealing electricity from his neighbor. And if anything, he's more interested in the girl. And I honestly liked his story. I liked that it wasn't a gritty coming of age of I have to care deeply about the politics around me. And he was more like, hey, well, that's fine and good. But at the end of the day, I actually just want this relationship with this girl. I just want a connection. I don't feel a connection going to these rallies. I feel a connection with this girl, and she's who I want to hang out with, and my roommate, and my little brother. And so I like that his journey was kind of just like living his life and trying to win over the affections of the girl, which he arguably kind of did by the end of it. It kind of ever so slightly reminded me of One Battle After Another, because in One Battle After Another, Leonardo DiCaprio's significant other kind of chooses the revolution over him and his daughter. Well, doesn't kind of. She straight up chooses the revolution over him and his daughter, and he's left out in the dust. And the end scene of the movie is him and Sombros and the girl Anne. They make out. They're kind of like, okay, they made a connection. They're going to be together. They pull up on a rally, and she jumps out of the car and leaves him to go join the revolution.
It is pretty funny, but I did see that parallel as well, and I think in the end, Sombra found what was important to him, and that was again his families and his friends. We have all these people that are fighting for these big ideals, right? And they're important, but he is kind of lost amongst it all. He doesn't know where he stands or who he is, and he's not really making any movement forward in any direction. He is, as you said, a bum. But then his brother enters the picture, and he has this cassette tape, and they hear that Empenigno, probably butchered that name, their favorite musician growing up, who's a sentimental figure to their dad, right, is dying soon. Now they want to see him. They want to meet him. This is all Thomas is initiating. And so we go from this state of stasis into a state of motion. And that was very intentional on the part of the director. I don't know if you noticed this, but in the first third of the movie, we see a lot less of those frenetic handheld camera shots. We see more static shots. And as we escape that apartment, right, as we move out, there's a moment in the film where you can hear the camera snapping off of the tripod, right? And then the whole movie becomes more energized. There is more forward momentum.
Wow, I did not pick up on that moment. That is really cool. But now that you're saying it, you are right, especially when we're in that apartment. Things are static. And that also reminds me of another part of Sombros's character development, his arc was the brother shows up and he's a 13-year-old kid. He wants to go do things. He wants to experience the big city. And Sombros keeps having this great line. He keeps saying, like, why would we go out there and do it? Like everything's going to come to an end. It was a little bit of a nihilistic approach. The younger brother Thomas was like, well, why don't we go hunt down the musician? Why don't we go to this rally? Why don't we go see the life? He's like, I mean, We could do that or we could just sit here. So there was a depression that Sombros was in. He didn't want to go out and experience the world. He wanted to like stay safe in his apartment. And just how like that camera snapped and we get the movement after they leave the apartment. After Tom, like, and the climax, his brother even says, my brother came here, Thomas, and he pushed me out of this apartment and he forced me to kind of see and experience the world. And I think it's him seeing and experiencing the world is what helped him get the girl in the end. That girl, she's wild, she's chaotic. She's never gonna fall in love with the guy that just sits in an apartment all day. She is both the poetic one, like she's on the radio saying all the poetry, but she's also an adventurous woman. So I feel like Sombros had to stop hiding behind kind of the like not having to make choices for himself by staying in his apartment, just writing his poetry from his computer, never having to go out and experience anything. And so I think that was part of his character development was getting out and letting loose.
Yeah. And it was all because Thomas wanted to find this musician, right? That they were able to go to the zoo, that they went to that film festival, that they walked through the campus and they got to see Santo's thesis project, which was dead. Speaking of the film festival that they attended, right? I love how self-referential this movie is, right? And you brought it up earlier. There's the literal fourth wall break where we see the clapper, right? And the actor directly talks about, yeah, I mean, like this script, I think it's kind of a bad script, honestly. Here are my gripes with it. And then post film festival, they're talking about Mexican cinema, right? And Sombros literally says, like, fucking Mexican cinema. They grab a bunch of beggars, shoot it in black and white, and say they're making art films, which surely was a subtle jab at themselves. But do you feel that this film was art? Do you feel that they were successful?
Oh, do I feel they were successful in making art? I would say yes. I think oh gosh, I mean, just the question of what is art. I mean, yeah, I think the director had a vision. I mean, I think he was very clearly pulling from a lot of personal experiences and was telling this very, very specific time capsule of Mexico history. And so yeah, I think he was able to capture art in this everyday city. It reminds me a little bit of Fallen Angels. Like how we were talking about how the city of Tokyo almost takes on a character unto itself. It's not Tokyo because it's in where does Fallen Angels take place? It's not Tokyo because it's not Japan. Aren't they Chinese?
It's Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Thank you. Yes. How Hong Kong also takes a character into itself in that story. It feels alive. It feels immersive. And I feel like it's much easier to get that in Asian cinema because we're much more enamored as a Western culture with Asian culture. The samurais, the swords, the temples, the honor and everything. But we're not nearly as interested, at least what I've seen in American culture, with Mexico culture. And so I think it's really cool to see this director pay homage to something that's very clearly important to him. As they're going through Mexico City, it really feels like a character unto itself. All the like the little gardens they visited and just all the people we saw when they go down the alleyway and almost get mugged, but it turns into like a weird hangout session. It felt like truthful to what that city was like. And so I think that is art capturing that and showing to the people of the world that have never experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that too, that Mexico City felt lived in part because this was Mexico City, right? Shooting on location.
The movie was created by someone who was from Mexico. They very clearly has different cultural background than someone who's born in America. Something that came across that was so clearly Mexico culture compared to America culture was how physical everyone was. Didn't matter if you were a guy on a guy or a girl on a guy, if you were an old person with a young person, and it wasn't sexual, but all the characters were so physical with each other. And I know that to be true from friends and from school, but I've just never really always experienced. You don't always see that in the movies. And I thought that was really fun to see that bit of culture in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one shot of Sombros listening to the music, the cassette tape, right? And Santos just rests his chin on Sombros' shoulder, and Thomas does the same, right? And the aspect ratio, what with it being so narrow, that 4:3, the shot feels very intimate, right? It's almost as if Sombra has a third shoulder, and I'm resting on that shoulder, and it certainly contributed to that feeling. Hearing Santos' facial hair as it scraped against Sombra's skin, which brings me to the sound design in this movie. This is one of the awards that it won was for best sound editing. I don't know about you, Nathaniel, but the aspect ratio, the sound design, the cinematography, made me feel so claustrophobic, right? I was so much closer to these people than I ever wanted to be, right? Hearing the wet sounds of their chewing, hearing their heavy labored breathing, hearing the scraping of the facial hair against skin, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't know about you, um, but like no one enjoys living in cramped quarters. No one enjoys having a panic attack, and this movie was inviting me into their experience, right? And if it wasn't causing me some measure of discomfort, then it wasn't working. But fortunately, in all the moments that it made me feel uncomfortable, it was trying to make me feel uncomfortable. So, do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, right before we started the podcast, Jeffrey and I were discussing what it was nominated for at this Mexico Film Festival. And out of one of the five that it won, I was like, oh, one of these I agree with. And that was the sound design. I thought the sound design was phenomenal. It immersed you in such a way that very other few films have. Like, you think of like Whiplash, one of the great movies that, because you can have great sound design that is just cool or epic, but a great sound design will immerse you into the movie, and this movie really did. Yeah, I didn't think about it in the moment, but now reflecting, you're right, with the 4:3 and the sound design and how it's shot, it does feel claustrophobic. But it also at times, like you just said, it feels intimate. So I like how they're able to play with both. It wasn't just a panic attack driven, high strung movie, all filled with like claustrophobia and stress. There are moments of slow, intentional intimacy that we get with it, which I think is kind of a cool component of like the idea of like being really close can be good and bad. You can be really close to something that can become overwhelming, and you can be really close to something that can be calming and peaceful. And that's just like that again, that's just good storytelling. Just show that through your cinematography rather than having any actor have to express it is beautiful.
And I feel that so much of the film was shot that way. I feel like we got very few moments um, where we were at a distance from people. And in those moments where we got distance, it did feel like relieving, right? It was giving me space that was much needed. Because whether it's claustrophobic or whether it's intimate, having it 24/7, that's gonna be a bit grating, right? Or it's gonna be hard to manage. It's gonna be a little overwhelming. And so that one shot in front of the manatees, right, that were swimming at the zoo, that was very nice, and it was a moment to breathe, right, because we were finally seeing these characters from a distance.
Not that it's exact, because like you said, in the second half of the movie, there are wide shots. They exist. But now that I'm thinking it back, the intro, before we get introduced to the brother, before we go to Mexico City, or just with Thomas, and that is shot much more wide. And not just wide, but it's shot much more isolated. I just reflect on some of the shots. I feel like you get less in the frame and you get Thomas more alone. And then as soon as he goes to be with his brother, there's life. Even like when they're just in the apartment and things are kind of depressing and they're not going out and living life as they should with their youth. There's still so much more hustle and bustle. There's still so much more commotion. There's so much more filming the frame. And that's just another good bit of storytelling. Just he was isolated before, and now, even though life isn't perfect, it's teeming with life within the frame itself. And then when they go out into the city, it's even more so.
Speaking of cinematography, right, that was one of the awards that it won. And I know that you said that of all of the awards that it won, sound design takes the cake. That's the one that it should have won the most, right? But what were your thoughts on did you have a favorite shot, or was there something that the director did, the cinematographer did in particular, that really captivated you, or made you feel immersed?
Favorite shot was probably the one I mentioned with them kicking the can. There's something about that. Like that's been done in movies. Like that's not like a new thing. I feel like if anything, it's a rehashed thing. But something about how they filmed the kicking of the can, it felt so organic and real. And it just made me remember when I would do it. I remember how I do it. When I go on walks, you find a rock, you find a pine cone, you kick it. Just something about that shot of their feet and the shakiness felt so real. Another shot that I really liked, one of the more stylized, because again, while it was more realistic, it wasn't always stylistic. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. Stylistic, maybe I'm meaning more towards like formalism. The shot early on in the movie when Thomas is in trouble because he dumps a water balloon on a woman with a baby, and he's running away from his house. We get a really cool shot of tracking him running, and the camera does a 180, and now it's tracking with his shadow running along the pavement. I thought that was really cool and something I haven't really ever seen before. And I think it was added by the shakiness of it. They didn't nail it. They flipped over. They kind of missed the shadow. They refocused on the shadow. In a big epic action movie, they could have easily, with like the technology they have now, done a completely perfect, smooth, seamless transition. But that wouldn't have gotten the emotion behind that moment of the kid running away, feeling, like this chaos ensuing as he just, harassed a woman and child. So I love that shot. Um, I do think some of the more dreamy shots, some of the things I think were supposed to pull us in as an audience of like, this is so artsy and beautiful, I actually thought were a little flat in the sense of this kind of feels like a lot of other artsy film. It doesn't really feel like it's always being new or creative. So in some instances, I thought there were some really, really strong cinematic moments. And other times I felt like, okay, we're almost pushing into like kind of how I said like Hollywood is kind of like uh, at a standstill with its creativeness. I almost feel like artsy films have its own category of like, okay, yeah, well, there's that shot that's in every artsy film. So I think it was a mixed bag, the cinematography for me.
Don't tell me you're talking about the scene in the car where they're being rained on by what looks like feathers.
No,
I loved that. I thought that was such a great moment. But here's the thing. The thing that I was impressed by is that looked practical. And I was just impressed by it gave me ideas as a filmmaker, right? That's doable, but it also ends up looking very aesthetic. And in my opinion, I thought it looked very good.
no, I thought that looked really nice, and that was one of the more movie magic scenes where you felt like you weren't in a realism movie, and it was more of like a formless, more exciting, more magical. So I really like that
It
scene.
was a nice break from the mundanity of real life, right? Not that this was a mundane movie, but it's about almost about mundane things, right? I don't mean that as a diss. I mean profundity in mundanity. That's what the Holy Moment podcast is about, right? Um, Finding truth, finding beauty in unexpected places. But that's just straight up beautiful.
Yeah, no, I really like that scene for those exact reasons. I'm thinking more of like they almost felt more like B-roll, like aspirational. The more like feel good, feel this moment, feel this coming of age emotion moment while they're just exploring New Mexico. When they run, when they ran away from the drunk guy that they were forced to like drive around because he threatened them, and then they like ran away in the car and they end up in some random garden. I felt like that just felt like kind of like, oh, let's just film it in 120 frames per second, slow motion B roll. It will look really like pretty and glossy. And so some of those shots, I just remember sitting and thinking, this just feels like an art house film. But again, that was not all of the movie.
What were your thoughts on their decision to go black and white?
I think it was I think it worked. Was I talking about this I was talking to someone the other day just about like the overuse or underuse of black and white and what it can convey. And I thought it's such an interesting question. When we think black and white, the first thing you think of is old. Okay, you make something black and white when it's an old movie. When you're trying to maybe make a Western, you're trying to make it feel like an old Western. When you're doing a flashback in the movie, you do it black and white because black and white immediately signifies this is an old movie. Because guess what? Old movies were shot in black and white. Okay, well, this movie was set in what was it, the 70s or 80s or 90s? Not super long ago. I don't think our director chose to shoot this in black and white to be like, oh, guys, this is a movie in the past. I need you to know it's a movie in the past, so black and white. I don't think that was the reasoning behind it. And I hope it's not because I don't like that's not what the black and white didn't do that for me. Why I would think the director chose black and white is something to do with a coming of age movie, which is supposed to be a very relatable experience. We all came of age some way, somehow, somewhere. It happened. Unless you're still a child, and then I'm sorry, you are not of age. But we've all done it before. It's familiar. And that's why we love coming of age movies because they're nostalgic. And I'm curious if the film director was trying to shake things up and like, hey, I'm going to give you something nostalgic, something familiar, but I'm going to give it to you in a new perspective. I'm going to give it to you black and white. And I think we were talking about this. Gosh, what movie were we talking about? How black and white and contrast force the eye rather than color. What movie? What episode was that? What were it wasn't too long ago.
Oh, you know what? I think it was the tragedy of Macbeth, right? Because we also talked about Paper Moon, but what the tragedy of Macbeth did It was because it was very formalist and it was very heavily inspired by German expressionism. It was trying to put the shadows in stark relief to the light. And so it would have made the most sense, I think, to discuss it in that context.
I do remember that discussion. Great episode. You got one of my favorite, really, is Strategy Macbeth. One of my favorite movies to watch on the podcast. Go watch it. But it was actually, I remember now, it was Yojimbo. It was Kurosawa. And we talked about
Oh, Yojimbo.
Kurosawa using black and white. And we had that whole discussion, like, why do black and white over like colored? And we discussed how contrast, it can really draw your eye. But I think Yojimbo's black and white versus this movie's black and white is very different. This movie's was more smooth. Was there contrast? Obviously, it's black and white. But something that Kurosawa does, it's this grainy contrast that pops out to our eyes, black and white. So I don't think our director was doing this for to direct the eye. I think he was doing it to shake up something that is familiar. I do not think it's good to use black and white to stand out and be different, but I do think it can be good if you're narratively trying to be like, this is something you're very familiar with. I'm going to present it in a new lens. 4:3, black and white.
I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on the editing of this movie. In particular, its use of jump cuts, right? And how it will very quickly jump from like an image to blackness to image to blackness to image.
When I think of the editing, it's not always, it's not a one for one, but I think often camera movement and camera placement can so often dictate the pace of which we edit. And so I think it goes back to kind of how we discussed once the camera came off the tripod, they did it narratively. It wasn't like a random choice. They were trying to make us feel more inside the lives of these characters with more shakiness, with more movement. I've been spending too much time on social media doing research, and it's the whole idea of where with reels, we've almost stripped away to the point of we want the most realistic thing. We want to feel like we're in the room with the person. We actually prefer shaky camera iPhones to a set up, Sony super nice camera, looks great on a tripod. We prefer the more realistic because it makes us feel like we're in the room with them. We have a genuine connection. So again, that's the reason I think the director and the cinematographer chose to do that. And I think that then leads to the editing changing. I'm not saying like there was an inconsistency with the editing, but I think it's what pushes the idea of these jump cuts. It pushes the idea of things moving around because when it comes to editing, no, we can't necessarily jump cut in our life. We see things for the most part like linear. You wake up, you go to the bathroom, you go to work, you hang out, you watch some TV, you go to bed. You saw all of it. You can't jump cut to different portions. But what you can do, in one of my favorite editing book called In the Blink of an Eye, it's in the name, we have tiny fractional edits throughout our entire day. You don't keep your eyes opening when you look from, your dinner plate to the kitchen sink. You blink, you cut out the in between. And I'm not saying that necessarily relates to this movie, but it made me think of that. And I think in this, the jump cuts that they ensue, it gives this more chaotic atmosphere to the movie, but I don't think it makes it less relatable. Doesn't make it less real. Like if you were to take like a movie, let's give a super extreme example, 1917, where there's technically no cutting. Like obviously it's not all just a one take. It's edited together. They're just hidden edits, but arguably you're not meant to see the edits. That is not how we perceive the world. We closer perceive the world to this movie than we do 1917, where it's all one long take. And so I do think while it's an extreme expression of how we view the world, it's not necessarily an accurate one. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, when we think back on a memory, we compartmentalize its distinct elements, right? We're not remembering exactly September 9th, 2024, the whole day as it plays out, beat for beat. No, like we're recalling moments, right? And moments of moments. Kind of makes me think of old home videos. Let's say you're watching them on a VHS, and it just quickly goes from one video to the next, and it might be of the same scene, just caught at different angles. Do you have that experience with the home videos?
Yes, with home videos, but also we get a pseudo documentary kind of vibe in this movie. Speaking of that, Thomas is going around with his camera. The movie actually ends with his brother going out into the rally to find his now girlfriend, not girlfriend, girl that he makes out with, who knows. and he's looking for her. And then Thomas yells over and he turns and Thomas snaps a picture and we end on that they hold frame on that photo. And so we get those narrative threads that this is kind of a reminiscing of their history. And it helps create that through line as he takes these photos and you hear the camera snapping and sometimes you cut to black with it. And it's like a home video. It's quite literally like a memory. So it's fine if we don't see every single moment of it because we don't remember every single moment of our childhood. You just remember those core memories, those core things that created us, the things that made us come of age. Hence the story.
This actually makes me think of After Sun a good bit, right? Because she's taking pictures, she's uh, present in the moment, like perceiving it through the lens of childhood, and that trip with her dad is a canon event for her.
This could 100% be like After Sun. Like if you gave me 45-year-old Thomas struggling with something and then he's like just looking at these photos he took of the summer with his brother and he's reminiscing about it and it's in this snapshotty kind of really realistic way because it's his memory, but also things are slightly kind of magical and whimsical or just like ethereal ever so slightly because again, it's also a memory. It's not perfect. I would 100% believe that if the director went that route.
Yeah, I mean, the director, in talking about this film, right, it takes place in 1999 during a very real um, the campus protest in which the dean of the university was wanting to start charging tuition for an institution that was free, right? And so a bunch of students occupied the campus and would sleep in the campus buildings for several days at a time. But even though it takes place in 1999 and it's about this particular event, the director is very careful not to specify a date. He isn't particularly concerned with hyperrealism, and in that, like, yes, 1999, but the rich kids also have smartphones that they're like scrolling through. It contributes to this. This is a memory, right? And I'm remembering things um, as I perceive them, right? Perhaps not as they actually were. This is um, a painting of a real scene, but it's a painting that captured a lot of um, very true things about life in Mexico City in 1999. Does this feel like a feature film, a first feature film to you?
No, no, no. When you said that, I was very surprised. Obviously, you could point to some of the more rustic filmmaking techniques, things that made it feel like with the use of shaky cam, with the use of using like some professional actors and non-actors. You could maybe argue, oh, this feels like someone who didn't have a lot of access to things, so that can maybe lend to like a new director. But no, no. Regardless if I did or didn't love this movie, it felt like it was made with purpose. Even if it's a meandering movie, even if it's a slow movie, even if it's a movie that doesn't say an incredible amount or a very direct thing, it is still, I think, made with great intention, and I felt that. I mean, don't look any further than the blocking to know that wow, this was made with great intention. So the fact that this was a first time director, I think, is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like the work of a director that has a few feature length films under their belt, and they have familiarized themselves with the rules enough to confidently break them, right? Every decision felt like intentional. Every choice that the director made had purpose behind it, as you were saying.
That is something I want to talk about briefly. I thought the blocking was so intentional and incredibly done. And it was one of the more unique things I felt about the film. Not just because they had intentional blocking. It's one thing. It's great to have intentional blocking. My wife and I just watched the most recent, the final season of season 5 of Stranger Things. I have a lot of great things to say about it. I have a lot of horrible things to say about it, but something that infuriated me. Like, I get it. It's television. We're not movies, but we're pouring just as much money into this show as we are movies. So there's not really an excuse. The amount of times it was just two people talking and it was over the shoulder, over the shoulder, over the shoulder, over the shoulder. There was no movement, killed me. There's specifically one scene where two characters were getting into a heated argument, and you saw the actress in her chair, her body language was begging to stand up. But it was, and I bet you dollars to donuts on the day that actress was like, well, I think my character would probably do this and get up and move. And I'm sure they're like, we don't got time. You sit your butt down. We're not moving this camera. I'll get off my soapbox about Stranger Things. I actually liked it, but besides the point. But this movie did a phenomenal job with blocking, but it did it in a really unique, interesting way. And some of the things I'm talking about is specifically our main character, Sombro. They had our characters he was talking to almost never show their face. Did you notice that? A lot of conversations he was in, they were really, really tight on Sombros, but then you see the back of someone's head in the like in the foreground. Like they would like actively not show people's faces who are talking. And I thought that was really interesting.
I, you know, I did notice that, and it was interesting starting the story with Thomas, right? Because you think that he's going to be the primary perspective character, but then we spend a lot of time with Sombros, and I would say that he feels more like a main character to me than Thomas does by the end of the movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's because Sombros' coming of age story is our story. It is him going through, like we said, everything, figuring out his love interest, figuring out what he thinks of this revolution, figuring out just for himself what it means to like be an adult, whatever. That is our narrative story. Thomas's coming of age story is watching Sombros's coming of age story. If you're a little brother or a little sibling, you know exactly what I mean. How pivotal is it to watch the people we look up to living their lives and making distinct memories and decisions? It impacts you greatly. So that's why I think Sombros had to take the foreground in the story because his coming of age story was a reflection of Thomas's coming of age story. And so that's why it kind of still is Thomas's story, but the main perspective is Sombros. Or maybe the perspective is Thomas, but the main character is Sombros, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. We get more peeks into Sombros's world, inner world, through the scene with the feathers and through those extremely tight close-ups on his face during his panic attacks. We never actually get that with Thomas, not that I can recall. Um, Thomas is always just like a kid, right? The shots tend to be on the wider side.
I love that they're each other's catalysts. If Thomas didn't show up, Sombros wouldn't have gone out and had his coming of age story. If Thomas didn't show up, he wouldn't have saw his brother go on a coming of age story, which would have been his coming of age story. Again, they can have kind of same coming of age stories because they're in different parts of their life. So I love that they're a catalyst to each other. And that's a cool thing as brothers, like or siblings in general. It's fun to know that your life is intertwined with this other person and your memories are intertwined with theirs. And even though you have different memories of things, they still happen because of each other. I think that's a really cool nod to real life. Again, realism.
For sure. It's always interesting talking about a shared memory with a sibling, right? Because you remember it a certain way, and it's very specific what you remember. And then they remember it a different way, and it's very specific how they remember it. Um, and there are details that both of you are like near convinced of that happen to contradict from time to time, right? And so it's very valuable getting other people's perspectives. Gueros, 2014, not 2024. We've edited out a bunch of times of me like introducing the podcast, and I gave the wrong date, and it's comical like how many moments of that we had to cut. But do you have any more thoughts before we?
Do I have any more thoughts? I really enjoyed, it was the backbone to the story, even though again, the story is so loose, it's not really it's like the most through line we get. But the brothers again hunting down this semi-famous musician that no one knows what's happened to him besides he's probably dying because a newspaper article says so. I think the climactic scene of that was really, really beautiful. So Thomas and Sombros and their two friends, they find him in a cafe. And this is the moment. They're going to get Thomas his cassette signed, and it's going to be amazing. He's going to meet his hero. Well, no. He is an old, drunkard, angry man. And he basically tells them, "Who the hell are you? F off." And then you get this really nice monologue from Sombros. It's kind of, I guess that's his character arc. Because again, Sombros is clearly going through this panic attack, living in apathy and depression. He doesn't know what he wants. He's not like a bad person. He just doesn't know what he's living for. And this final scene is him saying, "You know what? I finally get it. I get what life is about. I get that so many people go through their lives and they don't see the things that matter. I'm starting to understand that you get what matters. Your music is so beautiful. My father loved your music. He got what mattered. My brother loves your music." Like they see things differently. And I'm starting to see that. And so we maybe didn't exactly know what his perspective was by the end of the movie, but we knew he came to some conclusion about what matters and what doesn't. Was what matters family? Was it friends? Was it the revolution? Was it standing up for people? We don't quite know, but I think the point was more of finding your I don't love saying the sentence finding your own truth because it sounds so cliche. But I think for him, it's like he found a reason to live and he has this whole monologue. And then by the end of it's revealed the musician has fallen asleep and they all leave. Like, if this was any other movie, this was the point. This was the journey. And it would have been kind of unsatisfying. But these characters are just like, okay, that's life. Like, what do you want us to do? Sing a song and change the ending of our life? No, this is life. We're going to move on with ourselves. And they were fine with it. And I really like that scene.
It makes me think of we see Thomas listening to the cassette by himself, right? And we don't hear the audio. And as soon as he takes it off, the audio resumes. But while he's listening to that inaudible audio, there is an expression of pure bliss and peace. And then we cut later to Sombra listening to the same cassette tape, which has the same sentimental value to them both, right? Because it belonged to their dad. And he's listening to that song, the inaudible song, right? And he has this expression of pure bliss on his face. And then later, Anna tries on the headphones and she's listening to the cassette, again, to the inaudible song. And she doesn't really have any reaction to it, right? She's like, oh, this is I haven't heard anything like this before. Like, who is this? Oh, okay. And I think it goes to show the bond that these brothers have, even before they'd come to discover it, is they have shared memories, they have shared family, shared values, and they're bonding over this thing that is important to them both, and that's what brings them together.
Yeah, I love that attention to these two characters and their shared, honestly, growing up in their shared trauma. Because if I remember, there was a certain line in Sombros's kind of spiel at the end of the movie when he's talking to the musician, and this idea of like your music resonates with those who are kind of broken. You also have an earlier line where all the kids that are protesting at the school, Sombros kind of comments like, "You guys are all kind of rich. Like you would kind of be fine if you had to pay tuition." And so it kind of pokes at their own like falseness and their like rooting against the system, almost like you guys are kind of fighting someone else's battle. Like you're not the people that need to be worried about this. We kind of are, and we're the ones that are kind of sitting on the sidelines, which is just an interesting political statement to begin with. But then at the end, so you get this idea that like maybe not to say that Anna has it the easiest, but maybe I don't want to say you have to be broken to understand this music, but maybe there's something that like these brothers grew up with, some trauma, something that was more, something that forced them to grow up faster than they wanted to, that make them resonate with this music. That someone that Anna couldn't, she just wasn't able to. Which I don't know if the director was completely saying that, but it did seem like there's some allusions to it, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thought. I hadn't considered that before, but I mean in retrospect, I think it makes a lot of sense. With all of that being said, Gueros 2014. Let's talk about our holy moments.
I had a hard time choosing this. Not because I think a few things stuck out to me, and I'm gonna go with the simple one because I think to me at the end of the day, the highlight of this movie was the coming of age, falling in love with the characters, falling in love with the city, and having fun. So, kind of going into the second act as they get out into Mexico City and they start just bumming around and having a good time, and especially when Anna starts hanging out with them, I started to like Sombros. Sombros was he was dangerously treading the line of just being annoying and apathetic and lame and just a grating character to watch. But he redeemed himself when he went to that city and went and showed that like he wants to live life and he's scared. And once he starts letting loose and living it, he was a lot of fun to watch. And so I think my holy moment was when they were at that film festival, they were all hanging out and Anna pushes Sombros into the water, into the pool, and he pulls her in. And then the friend throws the brother in, and then all four of them, before you know, are in the water, just mucking about. It felt again movie magic. Like, could that happen? And does it happen? Sure. Did it happen to you? Did you do that with your friends? Did you go to film festivals and jump in the water and get kicked out by security? Probably not. So again, it felt heightened compared to what a normal like coming of age story looks like. But at the same time, it captured those raw emotions, those motions of youth, of living your life and just having fun. And since that was such a big part of the story, I think that's my holy moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great holy moment. And speaking of Sombros, I was really concerned starting the movie that he and Santos were just going to be abusive dicks towards Thomas the whole film. I thought that's what the movie would be about, right? Is Thomas's mom won't accept him, sent him to live with his brother, and the brother is just a jerk. And now we're watching this kid survive where he is being neglected and where he is not wanted. And so to find that the movie was kind of the opposite of that, it's these brothers finding each other, right? And discovering what's important to them. That was really cool. My holy moment. I think it would have to be that last shot. He's sort of walking after Anna, after she's left the car and she has become lost in the crowd. That was her choice. And as he's sort of staring off into the distance, and he can't see her, Thomas is like, hey, like, look over here. And sure enough, he looks. Thomas is there with his camera, smiling and looking at the thing that matters. He smiles back. And Thomas catches the photo, and that's the last shot of the movie. I just thought that was very beautiful and a nice bookend to their arcs.
It did feel like a moment because even though the brothers were in the same room for 90% of the movie, you didn't get a lot of brother intimacy. And I don't just mean physical. You didn't get a lot of them bonding. Funny enough, I really enjoyed the dynamics of Thomas and Sanchez, the roommate. They became like little buddies. And then you much more had Sombros and the love interest Anna being buddies. Like they were together, but they were like hanging out with each other rather than all four hanging out. So you don't get a lot of like brother on brother camaraderie and support. I would say like that scene and then that final scene where they're talking to the musician because at first it's Thomas who's like, "Hey, will you sign this? You mean a lot to me." And then when the musician's like, "Piss off," you get that older brother moment where he steps up and he's like, "Hey, look, this is what this means to us." And so those two moments really tied in that they are brothers, they do care for each other. And like you said, I really am happy that they are brothers who like each other and not like they were not antagonistic to each other. And that was not the point of the story. It was nice to see them having a story and growing together.
Were you at all afraid that would be what the movie's about?
I never got that specific fear. I did get again the fear that Sombros wasn't the main character, so therefore he was just going to be a apathetic, lazy sack, and we're just gonna watch
Kinda like one note.
Thomas. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was cool when we started to see him evolve. Because again, like we do get this setup that it's gonna be about Thomas. He's a troubled teenager. His father's dead. He's getting into trouble all the time. His mom can't handle him. Okay, where he's gonna be sent away. We're gonna see him flourish and change. But again, he changed because his brother changed. So therefore, we had to see his brother change. And I thought that was a really fascinating story structure to do.
Well, Nathaniel, what do you give this?
Ugh, I'm torn. I'm torn between ranking it on my enjoyment and torn between my ranking it on the level of which I thought the director did what he wanted to do and did a good job. Because if that was the case, I'd give this like a, approaching a 4. If it was on enjoyment, I'd give it closer approaching a 2. So I think I'm going to split the difference and say a 3. Again, these movies at the end of the day will very rarely be my cup of tea. Maybe I'll start enjoying them more. Like I did enjoy After Sun. I did really enjoy the second half of this movie. So maybe I just need to give these type of French New Wave movies more of a chance. But on a structural level, on a putting together a movie as a director, I think the director did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to give this a 3.7 or 3.8, both on an enjoyment and technical level. I think they're um, pretty closely aligned for me. I do enjoy these types of movies. They feel informative. I feel more enlightened as to like what it's like to be human, what it's like to be human in very specific places, in very specific circumstances. And so, like watching these four friends and kin experience life together, even if it isn't particularly structured, that feels valuable to me.
You're starting to sound like our old co-host Christopher Vega.
I mean, hey, I like Vega. I think that his taste in movies is very interesting, and sometimes to hit, sometimes to miss, right? But I will say I also enjoy classically structured movies a great deal. I could not watch this movie all the time. That's the thing for me.
I do appreciate that it does feel like a cleansing palette. Like if you just watched Hollywood movie after Hollywood movie, blockbuster after blockbuster, this really jolts your system to remind you cinema is made for stories. There are so many different types of stories out there, and these are kind of real stories. And so it definitely jolts your system to what movies can be done. Again, doesn't have to be made for, but can be made for. And I appreciate that. I agree with you. I think these types of movies are important to watch, and they do grow us as people and also film lovers.
Well, with that being said, folks, we've got a wheel to spin.
We do. Let's see. I think a funny follow up to this would be Sky High. Just going from the most high art brow movie to the most low art brow movie.
I hope so too. Sky High is such a fun time. I haven't seen that movie in forever.
Yeah, I did you rewatch it with me in college? I thought you were there, but you might not have been.
I may have been. That may
Jeffrey
have
and
been
I
when last
never
saw
being
it.
able to remember what movies we watched together. Okay, yeah, let's spin it. I'm not even going to tell you guys what I have left. Let's just go for it. The only movie I don't want it to be kind of is Prisoners because I should just never open my mouth. I should just never open my mouth. Next week we'll be watching Prisoners.
Okay, remind me what Prisoners is about and where it's from.
So the issue is I don't fully know. My understanding, I believe it's Jake Gyllenhaal and not Hugh Jackman. Yeah, Hugh Jackman. And I think it's about a kidnapped child. And I think it is a very dark, upsetting movie. I do not know really any more than that, and that information might even be wrong. But this is for the category film noir. I was really struggling to pick a movie for this because I really thought I should go classic. Double Indemnity, Sunset on Boulevard. Is that a film noir movie? Probably not.
I don't think so.
I'm just thinking old movies are all film noir, but that's not true. But the point is, I was thinking about going something more classic, but I thought Jeffrey would cover that, so I decided to do like a more new age film noir movie, like a new, like kind of something from the 21st century, and then that way we can compare it to Jeffrey's film noir movie, which is Double Indemnity. So yeah, we're watching Prisoners. So the director for this movie is Denis Villeneuve, who I might be mispronouncing, but I mean he did Dune, the most recent. He did Arrival. He did the new Blade Runner. So he's done a ton of really big movies, and people really like him as a director. So I'm excited to explore a little more of his film archive because I haven't seen a ton of his stuff. But yeah, next week, join us for Prisoners. I think it's going to be a bummer of a time. The only reason the reason I didn't want this movie is I have a busy week this next week, and I don't want to be sad. And I think I'm going to be sad. So, oh well.
Oh well. Well, hey. Thanks, folks, for tuning in to the Holy Moment podcast. Make sure to watch Prisoners so that you can be sad with us. And then when we release our episode, we can all commiserate. You can reach us at the Holy Moment Podcast at gmail.com. We post reels on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. But we also post our podcast episodes on YouTube and Spotify. Engage with us. That's our plea.
Well, Jeffrey, they would engage with us if you kept to your promise. Because I do believe the first season of this episode, you said you'd post feet pic on our social, and no such feet pic has been posted. So why would they engage with us if you're not a man of your word? Give the people what they want. We're going to start a revolution. I'm going to boycott you until you do it.
You're right. Oh, I'll tell you what. If one person emails us saying, "Please, Jeffrey, send us feet pic," I will send them a feet pic.
Oh, just them?
Just them. I will DM them privately, and I will say, "Here's my foot."
Okay, you hear that? Everyone that listens to our podcast, let them DM it to you, and then you post it and tag us in it, saying Jeffrey's num nums. All right.
With that, guys, have a nice night. Watch movies and stay holy.